My knees hit the marble floor. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. The only thing I could hear was the echo of my fated mate's voice, Rejection. I tried to run, to escape the humiliation of the mating ceremony, but the room spun. Darkness clawed at my vision. I was falling. I expected the cold, hard ground. But instead, I felt strong, warm arms catch me. Sparks, hotter than anything I had ever felt, erupted across my skin. I looked up into eyes of glowing, predatory violet. A deep voice growled, "Mine." And then, silence. Soft silk, the scent of pine and rain. This wasn't my room in the Omega quarters. I opened my eyes to see a man watching me. Not just any man. The Alpha King, and I was in his bed. Chapter 1. The Fall. The air in the great hall was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of champagne, expensive perfume, and the overwhelming, musk-heavy scent of 1,000 wolves. I shouldn't have been there. I knew that. I was Selene, the pack runt, the orphan, the Omega who scrubbed the floors and washed the cars. My gray dress was 3 sizes too big, a hand-me-down from one of the Gamma females, and my shoes were scuffed. I tried to make myself as small as possible, pressing my back against the cold stone pillar in the darkest corner of the room. I just wanted to see him, just once. It's Rafe, the future alpha of the Silver Moon Pack, the golden boy, the man who had made my life a living hell since we were children, yet the man my treacherous heart beat for. The drums rolled, signaling the start of the mating ceremony. The crowd fell silent. Rafe stepped onto the dais. He looked like a god under the chandeliers, tall, broad-shouldered, his hair the color of spun gold. He scanned the crowd, his chest heaving as he searched for the scent that would define his future. Ain! And then the wind shifted. It seized the air right out of my lungs. Cedarwood, smoke, and something sweet, like burnt sugar. My wolf, usually dormant and weak, woke up with a howl that echoed in my skull. "Mate!" she screamed. "Mate!" At the exact same moment, Rafe froze. His head snapped toward my corner. His golden eyes locked onto mine across the sea of people. For a heartbeat, just one singular, beautiful heartbeat. I saw shock in his eyes. I saw the recognition. He feels it too, I thought, a fragile hope blooming in my chest. The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. He stepped off the platform. The crowd parted for him. He walked straight toward me, his expression unreadable. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I took a step forward, my hands trembling. "Rafe?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. He stopped inches from me. He leaned down, inhaling my scent. I closed my eyes, waiting for his touch, waiting for the sparks that every story promised. But instead of a touch, I heard a laugh. A cold, cruel, humorless laugh. "You?" he sneered. I opened my eyes. The wonder was gone from his face, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated disgust. He looked at me like I was something he had stepped in. "The goddess has a sick sense of humor," he spat, loud enough for the nearby wolves to hear. "You think you are worthy of me? A floor scrubber? A weakling with no bloodline?" "Rafe, please," I begged, tears stinging my eyes. "It's the bond. You can't deny the bond. Watch me." He took a step back, raising his voice so it boomed through the silent hall. He wanted an audience. He wanted to make this permanent. "I, Rafe, future alpha of the Silver Moon, reject you, Selene, the pack slave." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. "I sever the bond," he continued, his voice slicing through me. "I cast you aside. I want nothing to do with you." The reaction was instant. It wasn't emotional. It was physical. It felt like an invisible hand had reached into my chest, wrapped around my ribs, and crushed them. A sound ripped from my throat, a gasp of pure agony. The bond, which had only just formed, snapped. It was a violent, bloody tear in my soul. My vision blurred. The edges of the room began to turn black. The faces of the crowd, laughing, jeering, pitying, swirled into a kaleidoscope of color. "Pathetic," I heard Rafe say from a distance. "She can't even take a rejection standing up." I stumbled. My legs gave out. I was falling forward, pitching toward the unforgiving marble floor. I braced myself for the impact, for the shattering of bone, for the final humiliation of face planting in front of the entire pack. But I never hit the floor. A shadow moved. It was faster than sight. faster than breath. Suddenly, a wall of muscle stopped my fall, arms thick and unyielding as iron bands wrapped around my waist. I was hauled up, pressed against a chest that felt like solid rock. And then, the sparks. If the bond with Rafe had been a candle, this was a supernova. A shockwave of heat, hotter than anything I had ever felt, erupted across my skin where the stranger touched me. It burned through the gray dress, through my skin, straight into my marrow. It wasn't painful. It was electric. It was alive. I forced my heavy eyelids open for one last second. I saw a black shirt straining against powerful muscles. I looked up, past a sharp jawline, straight into eyes that I had only heard about in legends. They weren't gold. They weren't blue. They were violet. Glowing, predatory, terrifying violet. There was only one bloodline in the world with eyes like that. The Lycan bloodline. The Kings. The pain of the rejection was fading, replaced by the overwhelming intensity of this new, impossible heat. A deep rumble vibrated through his chest, resonating into my own brittle bones. It wasn't a question. It was a command that shook the very foundations of the earth. Mine. And then, the darkness took me completely. Chapter 2. The Scent of Rain and Pine. Soft Silk. That was the first thing I registered. In the Omega quarters, the sheets were scratchy cotton, thinned by years of washing and smelling of bleach. But this fabric felt like cool water against my fevered skin. It was luxurious, heavy, and smooth. I took a deep breath, and my senses were instantly flooded. Pine, rain, and something else. Something dark, spicy, and distinctly masculine. It smelled like a storm about to break over a deep forest. It was the most intoxicating, comforting scent I had ever known. My wolf, who had been whimpering in pain just moments ago, suddenly settled, purring deep in my chest. Wait, pain? Memory crashed back into me like a tidal wave. The Great Hall, Rafe, the rejection, the snapping of the bond. I shot up in bed, a gasp tearing from my throat. No! I looked around frantically. This wasn't the infirmary. This wasn't the Omega quarters. This was a palace. The room was massive, larger than the entire dormitory I had lived in my whole life. The ceilings were high and vaulted, painted with murals of ancient wolf battles. A fireplace large enough to roast a whole ox dominated one wall, the embers glowing softly. Floor-to-ceiling windows were draped in heavy velvet curtains, blocking out the world. I looked down at myself. My gray rags were gone. I was wearing a shirt, a black button-down shirt that was comically large on me. The sleeves hung past my hands, and the hem reached my knees. I lifted the collar to my nose. It smelled like him. The storm. Panic set in. Where was I? Why was I wearing a strange man's clothes? I swung my legs off the massive bed. My head swam, dizzy from the aftershocks of the rejection. But I had to get out. I had to get back to the pack house. If Rafe found out I was missing, he would punish me. He would say I was slacking off. He would lock me in the cellar again. I took one step toward the door, and the handle turned. I froze. The heavy oak door creaked open. A man stepped inside. He was huge. That was the only word my brain could supply. He had to be over 6.5 feet tall. His shoulders were so broad, they nearly filled the doorway. He had messy, ink-black hair that fell over his forehead, and a face carved from granite, sharp, brutal, and breathtakingly handsome. He was shirtless. A towel hung low on his hips. His torso was a landscape of muscle and scars, marked with intricate tattoos of runes that glowed faintly against his skin. Water droplets from a shower clung to his chest, tracing the lines of his abs. But it was his eyes that paralyzed me. Violet, glowing, predatory. He froze when he saw me standing there, barefoot and trembling in his shirt. His gaze raked over me, dark and heavy, possessing every inch of me. You should be in bed, he said. His voice was a deep baritone that vibrated in the floorboards. My voice was trapped in my throat. I knew who this was. Every wolf in the kingdom knew who this was. Nikolai, the Alpha King, the ruler of all shifters. The man who was rumored to have killed a rogue army single-handedly. The man who supposedly had no heart. And I was in his room, in his shirt. I dropped to my knees, bowing my head to the floor. It was instinct. It was what I had been trained to do when an alpha entered the room. Your Majesty. I stammered, staring at the plush carpet. I am sorry, I didn't know. I'll leave immediately. Please forgive me. Silence stretched out, thick and tense. I waited for him to yell. I waited for the blow that always came when I spoke out of turn. Instead, I heard soft footsteps approaching. I flinched as I saw his bare feet stop right in front of my face. Get up, he commanded. I can't, Alpha. I am just an Omega. I shouldn't be here. I said, get up, little wolf. Before I could process the nickname, he reached down, his hands, large, calloused, and incredibly warm, gripped my upper arms. He didn't yank me. He lifted me effortlessly, as if I weighed nothing, until I was standing before him. He didn't let go. His hand stayed on my arms, his thumbs rubbing soothing circles against my skin through the fabric of his shirt. The sparks returned, a gentle hum now, warming my cold blood. Do not bow to me, he growled softly, his eyes searching mine. Not you. Never you. But why am I here? I whispered, tears leaking from my eyes. Why am I in your bed? You fainted, he said, his expression tightening. Your mate, that boy, he rejected you. The shock nearly stopped your heart. The reminder of Rafe made me sob. I tried to pull away, ashamed. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to be a burden. I'm just weak. Rafe was right. Be still, Nikolai commanded, his voice sharp. I froze, my body reacting to the alpha tone. You are not weak, he said, stepping closer until his chest brushed mine. You survived a public rejection from a fated mate and you are still standing. Most wolves would be dead. He lifted one hand from my arm and reached toward my face. I flinched violently, squeezing my eyes shut, expecting a hit. He paused. I felt his heat hovering inches from my skin. Who hurt you? He asked. The question was soft, but underneath it lay a terrifying layer of violence. I opened my eyes. He looked murderous. Not at me, but for me. Who made you flinch like that, Selene? I couldn't answer. I just shook my head, trembling in the arms of the most dangerous man in the world. Chapter 3. The Golden Cage. I backed away from him, scrambling until my back hit the heavy wood of the wardrobe. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might explode. I have to go, I said, my voice rising in panic. I have to go back. Nikolai didn't move to stop me physically, but his presence filled the room, blocking any escape. He crossed his arms over his massive chest. Go back where? He asked calmly. To the Silver Moon pack house, I said. I have chores. The Alpha, Rafe's father, he expects the floors to be polished by noon. If I'm not there, they'll dock my rations. Please, Your Majesty, let me go. Nikolai let out a short, dark laugh that sent shivers down my spine. You have no pack, Selene, he said brutally. Rafe rejected you. He severed the tie. You belong to no one. The words cut deep, but they were true. I was a rogue now, a stray. Then I will go to the rogue lands, I whispered. But I can't stay here. I don't belong in a palace. You belong where I say you belong, Nikolai growled. He took a step toward me, his violet eyes flashing. And right now, you belong under my protection. I am nobody, I cried out, frustration bubbling up. Why do you care? I am just a rejected Omega. I am damaged goods. Nikolai's face twisted in anger. He reached out and grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace stand. With a casual exertion of strength, he bent the thick metal into a U-shape with one hand, staring at me the whole time. If you call yourself damaged goods again, he said, his voice low and lethal, I will find Rafe and I will ensure he never speaks again. I stared at the bent iron, my mouth dry. He was defending me. Why? Just then, a sharp, rhythmic knocking echoed on the door. Nikolai didn't look away from me. Enter. The door opened and a man in a sharp gray suit walked in. He had wire-rimmed glasses and held a tablet in his hand. This was Lucian, the king's beta. I recognized him from the television. Lucian looked at Nikolai, then at me huddled by the wardrobe in the king's shirt. His eyebrows shot up, but he quickly composed himself. Your Majesty, Lucian said, bowing slightly. We have a situation at the gates. Nikolai sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. What is it, Lucian? It's the Silver Moon delegation, Lucian said, his voice tight. Specifically, the Alpha heir, Rafe. The name hit me like a whip. I let out a small whimper, sliding down the wardrobe until I hit the floor. He was here. He had come for me. He was going to drag me back and punish me for causing a scene at the ceremony. He's here, I gasped. Please, please don't let him take me. He'll lock me in the cellar again. He hates it when I embarrass him. The air in the room instantly dropped 10 degrees. Nikolai went completely still. He turned his head slowly to look at me. Again? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. He has locked you in a cellar before? I covered my mouth, realizing I had said too much. We weren't supposed to talk about pack discipline to outsiders. Lucian cleared his throat uncomfortably. He claims that Selene is property of the Silver Moon Pack. He says she is a runaway servant and demands she be returned immediately for disciplinary action. He has the council laws printed out, sire. I started to shake uncontrollably. I'll go, I whispered, trying to stand up on wobbling legs. I'll go down to him. I don't want any trouble for the king. Nikolai moved. He was in front of me in a blur of motion. He placed his hands on my shoulders, pinning me in place. You aren't going anywhere near him. He looked up at his beta. Lucian. Yes, sire? Go down to the gates, Nikolai commanded, his eyes burning with a violet fire. Tell Rafe that Selene is not here, but lying to an alpha regarding pack property. Lucian started, then stopped when he saw the look on Nikolai's face. Tell him she is not here, Nikolai repeated, enunciating every word. Tell him that if he ever steps foot on palace grounds again, I will consider it an act of war. Nikolai looked back down at me, his expression softening slightly as he saw my terror. And Lucian, sire, tell him that the Omega he rejected is in my bed, Nikolai growled, the sound vibrating through his chest and into mine. Let him try to come for her. Chapter 4. The Rejection Sickness. The adrenaline of Rafe's arrival faded as quickly as it had come, leaving a gaping hollow inside me. And then, the sickness took over. It started about an hour after Lucian left. It felt like my blood had turned to acid. My bones ached with a deep throbbing rhythm, and my skin felt like it was on fire. I lay in the center of the king's massive bed, curled into a tight ball, shivering violently. It hurts, I moaned, clutching my chest. Goddess, make it stop. It was the rejection sickness. When a fated bond is severed abruptly, the body goes into shock. Without the stabilizing energy of the mate, the wolf inside begins to wither. I'm here, a deep voice murmured. I opened my eyes to slits. Nikolai was sitting on the edge of the mattress. He was dressed now, in soft lounge pants, but his chest was still bare. He held a bowl of water and a cloth. Where are the doctors? I rasped. I sent them away, Nikolai said quietly. He dipped the cloth in the cool water and wrung it out. I don't want them touching you. He wiped my face. The cool water was heaven against my burning skin. His touch was surprisingly gentle for a man who could bend iron bars. Drink, he ordered, lifting a glass of water to my lips. I tried to lift my head, but my neck muscles felt like jelly. Without hesitation, Nikolai slid his arm under my shoulders, lifting me against his chest. His skin was hot, radiating alpha power. It should have been overwhelming, but in my sickened state, it was the only thing anchoring me to the world. I drank greedily, spilling some down my chin. He wiped it away with his thumb. Rafe, I mumbled, the fever making my mind drift. Why am I not good enough? I felt Nikolai stiffen against me. His heart rate picked up. A heavy thud, thud, thud against my ear. Do not think of him, Nikolai commanded, his voice tight with jealousy. I tried so hard. I cried softly, tears leaking into his skin. I ironed his shirts. I stayed out of his way. I just wanted him to see me. Nikolai set the glass down with a sharp clatter. He shifted so he was looking down at me, his face inches from mine. He is blind, Selene, Nikolai said fiercely. He is a fool. You are worth 10 of him. You're just saying that, I whispered, my eyes closing. Because you're the king. You have to save everyone. He let out a dark, humorless chuckle. Ask anyone in this kingdom. Savior is not a word they use to describe me. I am a conqueror. I am a killer. He brushed a strand of damp hair off my forehead. His fingers lingered on my cheek. But when I saw you fall, my heart stopped. I have faced armies, Selene. I have killed demons. But watching you fall, that terrified me. I blinked up at him, confused. The bond. I felt a pull toward him. a heavy gravitational pull. You caught me. I will always catch you. My eyes grew heavy. The pain was dulling, soothed by his proximity, by the scent of rain and pine. As I drifted off to sleep, I instinctively snuggled closer to the source of the heat. I buried my face in the crook of his neck. I felt him freeze. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, slowly, tentatively, I felt his heavy arms wrap around me. He pulled me entirely into his lap, cradling me like a child. He rested his chin on the top of my head. Sleep, little wolf, he whispered into my hair. I've got you. I won't let go. I woke up hours later, in the middle of the night. The fever had broken. The room was dark, lit only by the dying embers of the fire. I tried to move my hand, but it was held fast. I looked down. Nikolai was sleeping in the large armchair pulled right up to the side of the bed. His head was tipped back, his breathing deep and even, but his hand, his massive scarred hand, was tightly gripping mine. He hadn't left. He had stayed and watched over me all night. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. By the next morning, the rejection sickness had faded to a dull ache. I felt weak, like I had run a marathon. But I could stand without the room spinning. Nikolai was gone. There was a tray of food on the bedside table, toast, fruit, and tea, and a note written in sharp, angular handwriting. Eat, do not leave the room. I will return shortly. N. I ate ravenously. I hadn't seen this much food in a week at the pack house. But after an hour, the silence of the room began to press in on me. I needed to move. I needed fresh air. Just a peek, I told myself. I'll just look into the hallway. I washed my face in the lavish bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. I looked different. My cheeks had a bit of color. My eyes seemed brighter. I looked alive. I opened the heavy door and stepped out. The hallway was empty, lined with gold-framed portraits of past kings. I walked softly, my bare feet silent on the plush carpet, still wearing the king's oversized shirt. Well, look what the cat dragged in. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Standing at the top of the grand staircase was a woman. She was stunning, tall with flowing blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a dress that cost more than my entire life. She looked like a queen, and she was looking at me like I was a cockroach. Hello, I stammered. You must be the charity case, she sneered, walking down the stairs. Her heels clicked sharply on the marble. I'm Ravenna, daughter of Alpha Sterling, and you look ridiculous. She stopped in front of me, wrinkling her nose as she looked at my attire. Wearing the king's shirt? She laughed, a cruel tinkling sound. How tacky. But I suppose an Omega like you doesn't know any better. I'm Selene, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I know who you are, Ravenna said, stepping into my personal space. She smelled of expensive roses and arrogance. The whole palace is whispering about the pathetic little thing Nikolai brought home. Don't get comfortable, sweetie. I shrank back against the wall. I didn't ask to be here. Of course you didn't, Ravenna said, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. But you're enjoying it, aren't you? Playing the victim. Nikolai has a savior complex. He likes broken things. He picks up strays, fixes them up, and then sends them on their way. Do you really think he wants you? Her words stung because they echoed my own fears. Of course he didn't want me. He was a king. I was a reject. He saved me, I whispered. He pities you. She spat. It's embarrassing, really. Walking around in his clothes, smelling like sickness. You're staining the reputation of the throne just by being here. An Omega warmer for his bed until a real queen arrives. She reached out, her perfectly manicured hand grabbing a lock of my hair. She pulled hard. If you were smart, you'd leave before he gets bored and throws you out. Let go, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. Or what? You'll cry? You're an Omega. You're built to take orders. She raised her other hand, palm open, as if to slap me. I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut, waiting for the pain. Ravenna! The voice was like a crack of thunder. The air in the hallway instantly turned heavy, vibrating with pure, unadulterated power. Ravenna dropped my hair and stumbled back, her face draining of color. I opened my eyes. Nikolai was standing at the end of the hall. He was wearing a black suit now, looking every inch the king. But his face was twisted in a snarl that made my wolf whimper in submission. He didn't walk. He stalked toward us, the predatory grace of a wolf, ready to kill. What do you think you're doing? He growled. Nikolai, Ravenna stammered, putting on a fake smile. I was just welcoming your guest. We were having a girl-to-girl chat. I smelled your intent from the stairwell, Ravenna, Nikolai said, his voice dangerously calm. You were about to strike her. He stopped between us, placing his massive body as a shield in front of me. He didn't look at me. His violet eyes were fixed on Ravenna. Let me make myself perfectly clear, because apparently my court is deaf. He took a step toward her. She took a step back. Selene is not a guest, he declared. She is under my personal protection. If you look at her wrong, if you speak to her with disrespect, if you so much as breathe in her direction in a way I do not like, I will strip your father of his title and banish you to the wastelands. Ravenna gasped, clutching her chest. Nikolai, you can't be serious. For her? She's a nobody. Try me, Nikolai challenged. The threat hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Ravenna looked at me, hate burning in her eyes, before she curtsied shakily and fled down the hall, her heels clicking frantically. Nikolai turned to me immediately. The rage vanished, replaced by a frantic concern that took my breath away. His hands were on my face, tilting my head, checking for injuries. Did she hurt you? He demanded. Did she touch you? No, I'm okay. I breathed, looking up at him. You came just in time. He let out a breath he had been holding. He moved his hand from my face to my lower back, his large palm pressing warmly against my spine. He pulled me flush against his suit. I could feel his heart racing beneath the expensive fabric. I should have been here, he murmured, resting his forehead against mine. I won't leave you alone again. I promise. Thank you, I whispered. He pulled back slightly, looking deep into my eyes. Come, I have something to show you. Something that will explain why you are here, and why I cannot let you go. Where? My library, he said. And then, we prepare for war, because Rafe is not done with you yet. Chapter 6. The King's Library. Come, Nikolai said, his voice low and rumbling like distant thunder. I need to get you away from here. The air in this hallway is tainted now. He placed a hand on the small of my back. The heat of his palm seeped through the fabric of the oversized shirt I was still wearing. His shirt, and it felt like a brand. It was a claim, silent and heavy. He guided me away from the staircase where Ravenna had cornered me, leading me deeper into the royal wing of the palace. I struggled to keep up with his long, purposeful strides, my bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. My heart was still pounding in my throat. A frantic bird trapped in a cage. I had never been defended before. In the Silver Moon Pack, if I was bullied, I was expected to take it. I was expected to lower my head and apologize for existing. But Nikolai, he had looked ready to tear the throat out of a high-ranking noble just for touching my hair. Where are we going? I asked softly, my voice trembling. Somewhere quiet, he replied without looking down, his jaw still set in a hard line. Somewhere you can breathe. He stopped in front of a set of massive double doors, made of dark mahogany. They were carved with intricate vines and wolves howling at the moon, the wood polished until it gleamed like obsidian. He pushed them open with one hand and stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. I stepped inside and gasped. It was a library, but to call it a library felt like an insult. It was a cathedral of words. The room was 2 stories high, with a wrought iron spiral staircase winding up to a balcony that circled the upper level. Every inch of the walls was covered in books, thousands of them. Leather-bound, cloth-bound, ancient scrolls, modern hardcovers. The scent of old paper, vanilla, and leather hit me, a smell even better than the pine forest. It was the smell of stories, the smell of escape. Sunlight streamed in through massive arched windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air like tiny stars. Oh, I breathed, spinning in a slow circle, forgetting my fear for a moment. It's beautiful. I walked toward the nearest shelf, my fingers itching to touch the spines. I had always loved books, but they were forbidden luxuries in my old life. I've never seen so many books, I whispered. The Silver Moon Pack House only had a small shelf in the Alpha's office. I used to sneak in there when I was cleaning just to read the titles. I felt Nikolai move up behind me. He didn't touch me, but his heat radiated against my back, a solid wall of protection. You only read the titles? He asked, his voice losing some of its edge. I nodded, tracing the gold lettering on a spine titled The History of the Lycan Wars. Rafe. Rafe said that Omegas didn't need to read. He said our job was to serve, not to think. Once he caught me with a paperback I found in the trash. I swallowed hard, the memory stinging. He burned it in the fireplace while I watched. I confessed softly. He said dreams were dangerous for someone like me. He said I needed to focus on reality. I felt the temperature in the room drop. Nikolai's presence flared, dark and suffocating. He burned them? The words came out as a growl. Yes. Nikolai reached past me. His arm brushed against my shoulder, sending a cascade of sparks down my arm. He pulled a heavy blue volume from the shelf. Here, he said, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. He held it out to me. Take it. I hesitated, looking at his large hand holding the book. I can't. I might damage it. My hands are rough from cleaning. Selene, he said, and the way he said my name sounded like a prayer and a command all at once. Everything in this room is yours. You can read them. You can hoard them. You can build a fort out of them for all I care. No one will ever burn a book in front of you again. Trembling, I reached out and took the book. Our fingers brushed. The air left the room. The sparks were instantaneous and violent. It felt like grabbing a live wire. A jolt of pure energy shot up my arm, straight to my heart, making my knees buckle. I gasped, the book slipping slightly in my grip. Nikolai caught it, his hand covering mine. He didn't pull away. He stepped closer, trapping me between his hard body and the bookshelf. He was so close I could count the flecks of gold in his violet eyes. I could smell the storm in his scent, rain, ozone, and desire. He looked down at me, his gaze dropping to my lips, then back up to my eyes. His pupils were blown wide, swallowing the iris. You feel it, he whispered. It wasn't a question. Yes, I breathed, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought he must be able to feel it. It burns. It's the bond, he murmured, leaning in. His face was inches from mine. It recognizes its other half. It wants to complete the circuit. I tilted my head back, my breath hitching. I wanted him to kiss me. God, I wanted him to kiss me. I wanted to forget Rafe, forget the pack, forget the shame of being rejected, and lose myself in the feeling of being wanted by this god of a man. His nose brushed against mine. His hand tightened over mine on the book. Sire. The voice from the doorway shattered the moment like glass. Nikolai froze. A low, feral snarl ripped from his throat, vibrating through his chest and into mine. He squeezed his eyes shut for a second, looking like a man in physical pain, before he pulled away from me. The loss of his warmth was immediate and jarring. He turned around, shielding me from the intruder with his body. It was Lucian again. The beta looked pale, clutching a tablet to his chest, sweat beading on his forehead. Forgive me, Your Majesty, Lucian said, his voice trembling slightly. I knocked, but the aura in here was too thick. You didn't hear me. This had better be an emergency, Lucian, Nikolai said, his voice deadly cold. Or you will be finding a new pack by sunset. It is, sire, Lucian said, stepping forward. He's back, Rafe, and he is at the main gates. Chapter 7. The Unexpected Visitor. The peace of the library evaporated instantly. The mention of Rafe's name was like a poison, seeping into the room and choking the air. I shrank back against the bookshelf, clutching the book Nikolai had given me to my chest like a shield. He's here? I whispered. He came for me? Nikolai turned to me. The softness that had been in his eyes moments ago was gone, replaced by the hardened steel of a king. Stay here, Selene. No, I said, the word surprising me. I want to see. Nikolai frowned, his brow furrowing. He is here to hurt you. He is here to reclaim you like a lost piece of luggage. I will not allow him near you. I won't go down there, I promised, stepping forward. But there's a balcony overlooking the courtyard, isn't there? I need to see him. I need to know he can't hurt me anymore. Please, Nikolai? Nikolai studied my face for a long moment. He must have seen the desperation in my eyes, the need to confront my nightmare from a safe distance. He nodded once. Lucian, take her to the west balcony. It is shielded with privacy glass. He won't be able to smell her or see her, but she can hear everything. 10 minutes later, I was standing on a stone balcony high above the palace gates. Shadows draped over me, hiding me from the world below. Down in the courtyard, a black SUV had pulled up, The silver moon crest was painted on the doors. My stomach twisted. I knew that car. I had washed it 100 times. Rafe stepped out of the vehicle. From this height, he looked small. It was strange. In my memories, Rafe was a giant, a looming monster who controlled my every breath. But looking at him now, standing in the shadow of the king's palace, he just looked like a boy in an ill-fitting suit. He looked arrogant, yes, but he also looked nervous. He kept adjusting his tie, glancing at the massive palace guards who stood like statues at the gate, their hands on their weapons. Then, the massive front doors of the palace opened. Nikolai walked out. If Rafe looked like a boy, Nikolai looked like a god of war. He wasn't wearing a suit. He had changed into tactical gear, black cargo pants, and a tight black shirt that emphasized the sheer width of his shoulders. He didn't walk. He prowled. He stopped at the top of the stairs, looking down at Rafe with an expression of utter boredom. You are persistent. Nikolai's voice boomed across the courtyard. He didn't need a microphone. His alpha command carried the sound effortlessly. I told you, Rafe of Silvermoon, that if you returned, I would consider it an act of war. Rafe swallowed hard. I saw his throat bob, but his arrogance pushed him forward. I am within my rights, King Nikolai, Rafe shouted back, though his voice cracked slightly. Under Article 4 of the Shifter Concordat, a pack alpha has the right to reclaim runaway property. Selene is a member of my pack. She is listed on our census. You are harboring a fugitive. A fugitive, Nikolai repeated, descending the stairs slowly, step by terrifying step. Is that what we are calling her? Not a mate? She is not my mate, Rafe snapped, his face flushing red. I rejected her. She is nothing. She is a servant who abandoned her post. If she is nothing, Nikolai said, stopping at the bottom of the stairs, towering over Rafe by a full head. Then why are you here? Why drive 3 hours for a servant who scrubs floors? Surely you have other Omegas to abuse, Rafe faltered. He looked around, then back at Nikolai. It is the principle of the thing. She belongs to us. Nikolai laughed. It was a dark, terrifying sound that sent birds scattering from the trees. She belongs to no one, Nikolai snarled. She is a living being, and you cast her aside. You broke the bond. You publicly humiliated her. By your own laws, Rafe, once a rejection is spoken, the tie is severed. She is a rogue, and as king, I have the right to grant asylum to any rogue I choose. I made a mistake, Rafe blurted out. Silence descended on the courtyard. I froze on the balcony. A mistake? Nikolai went deadly still. A mistake? I want to take back the rejection, Rafe stammered, sweating profusely. I was hasty. The stress of the ceremony. I wasn't thinking clearly. She is my fated mate. I want her back, I gasped, gripping the stone railing. He wanted me back? After everything he said? Nikolai took a step forward. Rafe took a step back. You want her back? Nikolai asked softly. You think you can just snap your fingers and the bond repairs itself? You shattered her heart, boy. You nearly killed her with the rejection sickness. That is between me and my mate. Rafe sneered, gaining a burst of false confidence. It is not the business of the crown. Give her to me. She is not here, Nikolai lied smoothly. Rafe narrowed his eyes, sniffing the air. You're lying. I can smell her on you. You smell like pine and rain, but underneath that, vanilla. That's her. Rafe's face twisted into a sneer of disgust. You've been with her. The king and the pack slut. How fitting, I gasped. The insult cut deep, like a physical slap. But before I could even process the hurt, Nikolai moved. It happened so fast I almost missed it. 1 second Nikolai was standing still, the next he had crossed the distance. His hand, his massive, deadly hand, was wrapped around Rafe's throat. He lifted Rafe off the ground, his feet dangling in the air. The guards raised their weapons, but Nikolai didn't need them. Speak of her with disrespect again, Nikolai roared, his eyes glowing bright violet, and I will rip your tongue from your head. Rafe clawed at Nikolai's hand, choking, his face turning purple. She is under my protection, Nikolai bellowed. Go back to your father. Tell him that if he wants Selene, he can come and take her from my cold, dead hands. Get out of my sight. He threw Rafe. He literally threw him. Rafe flew backward, crashing into the side of his black SUV, denting the metal. He slid to the ground, gasping for air, clutching his throat. Go, Nikolai commanded. Rafe didn't argue. He scrambled into the car, coughing. The engine roared to life, and he sped away, kicking up gravel. I stood on the balcony, shaking. He had fought for me. He had attacked an alpha heir for me. I looked down, and Nikolai looked up. He looked straight at the balcony, straight into the shadows where I was hiding. His eyes were still glowing. I am safe, I realized. For the first time in my life, I am safe. Chapter 8. The Training Ground. 2 days passed after the incident at the gates. The palace was tense. Everyone knew that Rafe wouldn't give up that easily, but I felt a strange sense of calm. I had a protector. But as I watched the royal guard drilling in the courtyard from my window, I realized something. I didn't want to just be protected. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to stop being the victim, waiting for a savior. I found Nikolai in the royal gymnasium late that evening. It was a massive facility with mats, weights, and sparring rings. He was punching a heavy bag, the sound of his fists hitting the leather echoing like gunshots. Thwack, thwack, thwack. He was shirtless again, sweat glistening on his skin, highlighting the rune tattoos on his back. I watched him for a moment, mesmerized by the power in his movements. Stop staring, little wolf, he said without turning around. Or come closer. I stepped into the room, the door clicking shut behind me. How did you know I was there? He stopped the swinging bag with one hand and turned to face me, wiping sweat from his forehead with his forearm. I always know where you are. Your scent? It's loud, to me. I walked up to the edge of the mat. I want you to teach me. He raised an eyebrow. Teach you what? Philosophy? History? To fight? I said, my voice steady. I saw what you did to Rafe. I saw how easily you handled him. I don't want to be the girl who faints anymore. If Rafe comes back, I want to be able to hurt him. Nikolai studied me seriously. He didn't laugh. He didn't tell me I was too small or too weak. He nodded slowly. Okay? Okay? I asked, surprised it was that easy. Take off your shoes, he commanded, stepping onto the center of the mat. Come here. I kicked off my flats and stepped onto the mat. The rubber was cool beneath my feet. I felt tiny next to him. First rule of fighting someone bigger than you, Nikolai said, circling me like a predator. Don't try to overpower them. You will lose. You have to use their momentum against them. Say, he moved behind me. Get into a stance, feet shoulder width apart. I tried to mimic what I had seen the warriors do. Nikolai made a noise of disapproval. No, like this? He stepped in close, his chest pressed against my back. His hands came around to touch my waist, adjusting my hips. Widen your stance, he murmured, his breath hot against my neck. Lower your center of gravity. His hands were large and hot. He slid one hand down my arm to adjust my wrist, and the other hand rested firmly on my stomach. The contact was electric. The air in the gym became thick and heavy. I could hardly focus on his instructions. All I could feel was his body against mine, the hard ridge of his muscles, the scent of his sweat and power. Focus, Selene, he whispered, his voice rough. If I attack you now, you'll fall. I can't focus when you're this close, I admitted breathlessly. He paused. His hands tightened slightly on my waist. You have to learn to focus through the distraction, through the fear, through the heat. He moved away suddenly, spinning me around to face him. Try to hit me. What? Hit me. As hard as you can. I hesitated, then threw a punch. It was slow and clumsy. He caught my fist in his palm effortlessly. Again? I tried again, and again. For an hour we moved. He corrected my form, his touches lingering longer than necessary. We were both sweating now. The tension in the room was a physical thing, a taut wire, ready to snap. Good, he said, breathing hard. Now, try to sweep my leg. I dropped low and swung my leg out. Surprisingly, I connected. Nikolai didn't fall, but he stumbled. I scrambled up, trying to take advantage of his distraction, but I moved too fast. My foot slipped on the sweat-slicked mat. Whoa! I fell forward. Nikolai caught me, but the momentum took us both down. We crashed onto the mat. I landed on top of him. My chest was pressed against his. My legs were tangled with his. My face was inches from his. Time stopped. He looked up at me, his violet eyes dark with hunger. His hands were on my hips, holding me in place. He wasn't just an alpha teaching a student anymore. He was a male with his mate. Selene, he groaned, his voice sounding like grinding stones. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. Nikolai, he reached up, his hand tangling in my hair, pulling my head down. Our lips were a breath apart. I could taste his scent on my tongue. You have no idea, he whispered, how hard it is to keep my hands off you. Then don't, I whispered back. He growled, a low sound of surrender, and surged up to kiss me. But before our lips could touch, the gym doors banged open. We scrambled apart like guilty teenagers. It was Lucian again. He looked frantic, holding a stack of old yellowed documents. Sire, you need to come, now. Nikolai stood up, pulling me with him. His face was flushed, his eyes wild. He looked at Lucian with murder in his eyes. This had better be life or death, Lucian. It is, Lucian said gravely. I found it. The truth about Selene's bloodline. Chapter 9. The truth about the Omega. We sat in the king's private study. The room was dimly lit, filled with the smell of old paper and tension. Nikolai sat behind his massive desk, and I sat in the velvet chair opposite him. Lucian stood spreading documents across the mahogany surface. They looked like birth records, census data, and old pack reports from 20 years ago. What is this? I asked, feeling a knot form in my stomach. After Rafe claimed you had genetic value at the gate, I started digging, Lucian explained gently. I looked into the archives of the Crescent Pack, your mother's pack, the one that was destroyed in the Great War. My mother was a rogue, I said automatically. That's what the Silver Moon Alpha told me. He said she was a weakling who died in childbirth. No, Nikolai said, reading a document over Lucian's shoulder. His voice was tight with anger. Your mother was not a rogue, and she was certainly not weak. Lucian slid a photograph across the desk. It was grainy and black and white, but the woman in the picture looked exactly like me, except her eyes were glowing white. Your mother was a high priestess of the White Wolf lineage, Lucian revealed. I stared at them, confused. The White Wolf? That's a myth. A nursery rhyme? It is rare, Lucian corrected, but very real. In your bloodline, the females are born with immense spiritual energy. They are called mooncasters. They can manipulate the bond, heal wounds instantly, and, in some cases, control other wolves. But I'm weak, I argued, my voice rising. I'm an Omega. I can barely shift. I faint when alphas use their command voice. That is a defense mechanism, Nikolai explained, looking at me with a mixture of awe and sadness. Your body is suppressing your power to keep you hidden. If you had shown your true strength as a child, other alphas would have hunted you. Rafe's father, he must have known. That's why they kept you as a servant. To break you, Lucian added grimly, to keep your spirit so beaten down that you wouldn't accidentally use your magic. I felt sick. My whole life was a lie. They hadn't hated me because I was worthless. They had hated me because they were afraid of me. Rafe knows now, Nikolai said, his fist clenching on the desk. That is why he wants you back. He doesn't want to mate Selene. Lucian pointed to a line on the paper. He wants to breed you. The room spun. Breed me? He wants to use you to create an army of mooncasters, Lucian said, his voice filled with disgust. He wants to challenge the king. He needs your genetics to do it. A chill went down my spine, colder than ice. Rafe didn't love me. He didn't even regret the rejection. He just wanted to use me as a broodmare. I felt dirty, used. He knows that if you complete the bond with a powerful alpha, Lucian said, glancing at Nikolai, the suppression will break, your power will return. That is why he is desperate. I won't let them take you, Nikolai swore, stepping around the desk to stand before me. He knelt down so we were eye level. I don't care about your power. I don't care about the White Wolf. I only care about you. Tears streamed down my face. I'm scared, Nikolai. He took my hands in his. I know. But you don't have to hide anymore. Tonight is the Royal Moon Ball. All the alphas of the Alliance will be there. He lifted my chin, forcing me to look into his violet eyes. Rafe might try to sneak in. Let him try. Tonight I am going to introduce you to the world. Not as a refugee, not as a servant, but as my partner. Let them see that you belong to the king. Chapter 10. The Royal Ball. The transformation took 3 hours. A team of stylists, the best in the kingdom, swarmed me in my room. They bathed me in oils that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. They arranged my hair into an intricate cascade of curls pinned with diamond clips. They painted my lips a deep crimson. Then, the dress. It was silver, not a dull gray like my servant rags, but a shimmering, liquid silver that looked like it was woven from starlight. It was strapless, fitting my torso like a second skin before flaring out at the waist into a dramatic train. It had a slit up the side that went dangerously high, revealing my leg with every step. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. She wasn't Selene the servant. She was a queen. You look breathtaking, the head stylist whispered. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. I walked to the top of the grand staircase. The ballroom below was packed. Hundreds of alphas, lunas, and dignitaries from every packet in the alliance were there. Music floated through the air, a waltz played by a live orchestra. The room was a sea of velvet, silk, and jewels. At the bottom of the stairs stood Nikolai. He was wearing a formal military dress uniform, black with gold epaulets and a sash of deep purple. He looked devastatingly handsome. He was talking to a foreign alpha, but the moment I stepped onto the landing, he stopped mid-sentence. And he looked up. The entire room seemed to follow his gaze. The music faltered. The chatter died down. Silence swept across the ballroom as I descended the stairs. I felt hundreds of eyes on me, judging, curious, envious, but I only saw one pair, violet eyes that burned with pride and possession. Nikolai walked to the base of the stairs to meet me. He didn't wait for me to reach the bottom. He met me on the last step, taking my hand and bowing low. A king bowing to an omega. The crowd gasped. You, he whispered, his voice rough, are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. If I didn't have to be diplomatic tonight, I would carry you back to my room right now. I blushed, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. You clean up nice too, Your Majesty. He smirked and offered me his arm. Dance with me, Selene. He led me onto the dance floor. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. We stepped into the center of the room, and he pulled me close. One hand engulfed my small hand, the other rested possessively on my waist. The music swelled. We began to move. It felt like flying. I had never danced before, but Nikolai led me effortlessly. We spun, the silver fabric of my dress swirling around us. For a moment, the world disappeared. It was just us. They are all looking at you, Nikolai murmured in my ear. They are wondering why the king is dancing with the servant, I replied. No, he corrected, his eyes flashing. They are wondering who the goddess in silver is, and they are terrified because they can see that I would kill anyone who tries to touch her. I laughed softly, feeling happy. Truly happy. But happiness is fragile. As we spun near the edge of the dance floor, I caught a glimpse of a face in the crowd, a face that shouldn't be there. Rafe. He was standing in the shadows near a pillar, holding a glass of champagne. He wasn't wearing his pack colors. He was disguised in a plain black suit, blending in with the other guests. But I knew that sneer anywhere. He locked eyes with me. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked smug. He raised his glass in a mock toast, mouthing words that made my blood run cold. Ursha, time to come home. I stumbled, missing a step. Nikolai caught me instantly. Selene? What is it? Rafe, I whispered, clutching Nikolai's lapel, my knuckles turning white. He's here. I saw him. Nikolai's head snapped up, scanning the crowd like a radar. Where? By the pillar. The east pillar. Nikolai looked, but Rafe was gone, vanished into the throng of dancers. He shouldn't be able to get in, Nikolai growled, his body tensing like a coiled spring. The wards are set to reject him. Suddenly, a waiter bumped into me. A tray of drinks tipped over, splashing red wine onto my silver dress. Oh, I'm so sorry, miss, the waiter cried, fumbling with a napkin. It's okay, I said, distracted, still looking for Rafe. Let me help you clean up. There is a powder room just there, the waiter insisted, pointing to a side door hidden behind a velvet curtain. Go, Nikolai said, his eyes still scanning the room for threats. Go clean up. I will find Lucian and secure the exits. Do not go anywhere else. I nodded and followed the waiter toward the side door. I just wanted to get the sticky wine off my skin and get back to Nikolai. I walked into the quiet corridor, the noise of the party fading behind me. But as the door clicked shut, I realized something was wrong. The air didn't smell like perfume anymore. It smelled like chloroform. And Rafe was smiling from the shadows. Chapter 11. The Trap. The applause from the dance floor was still ringing in my ears, a distant muffled roar through the heavy velvet curtains. I walked into the quiet corridor, the waiter's apology still fresh in my mind. The air here was cooler than the ballroom, damp and smelling of old stone. The side door clicked shut behind me, cutting off the music and the laughter. The powder room is the second door on the left, the waiter had said. I walked toward it, bunching the wine-stained silver fabric in my hands. I just wanted to scrub the red stain out, splash some water on my face, and get back to the safety of Nikolai's arms. Every second away from him felt wrong, like a limb had been severed. I reached for the handle of the second door, but before my fingers could brush the cold metal, a shadow detached itself from the alcove further down the hall. Hello, Selene. My blood turned to ice. I knew that voice. I had heard it in my nightmares for years. I spun around, my back hitting the wall. It was Rafe. He looked different up close. In the courtyard, he had looked small. Here, in the dim light of the service corridor, he looked desperate. His eyes were rimmed with red, sweat beaded on his forehead, and his hands were shaking. He wasn't wearing his pack colors. He was dressed in a nondescript black suit, blending into the shadows like a predator. Rafe, I breathed, my voice trembling. You can't be here, Nikolai said. Nikolai, Rafe spat the name like a curse. He took a step closer. You think I care what that mongrel king says? He doesn't know what you are, Selene. He thinks you're just a pretty face. Get away from me, I warned, trying to summon the courage I had felt in the gymnasium. I widened my stance, lowering my center of gravity just as Nikolai had taught me. The guards are everywhere? The guards are watching the front gate and the ballroom. Rafe sneered, pulling a white cloth from his pocket. They aren't watching the garbage chute. Nikolai will kill you, I hissed. He will tear you apart. He has to find us first, Rafe laughed, a dry, manic sound. He lunged. I tried to dodge, swinging my fist the way Nikolai had shown me, but Rafe was an alpha. He was faster, stronger, and fueled by desperation. He caught my wrist mid-swing, twisting it behind my back until I cried out in pain. Ay! Stop fighting, he growled, slamming me against the wall. His other hand clamped over my mouth, pressing the cloth against my nose. The smell hit me instantly. Sweet, chemical, sickening, chloroform. I tried to hold my breath. I clawed at his face, my nails digging into his skin, drawing blood, but my limbs felt instantly heavy, as if my bones had turned to lead. The corridor began to spin. The floor tilted up to meet me. Shh, Rafe whispered in my ear, his voice cruel and triumphant. Did you really think you could escape me? You're not a queen, Selene. You're breeding stock. And we have a lot of work to do. My knees hit the concrete. The darkness rushed in, swirling and absolute. My last thought was a desperate plea. A silent scream sent through the bond I had tried so hard to deny. Nikolai, Chapter 12. The King Goes Feral. I woke up to the sound of tires crunching on gravel and the smell of stale leather. My head throbbed with a dull rhythmic ache. I was lying across the back seat of a moving car. My hands were bound tightly in front of me with plastic zip ties that bit into my skin. I blinked, trying to clear the chemical fog from my vision. Awake already? Rafe's voice came from the driver's seat. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes cold. Good, we're almost at the safe house. My father has the doctors waiting. Let me go, I croaked, my throat dry as sandpaper. I struggled to sit up. Outside the window, endless rows of pine trees flashed by in a blur of darkness. We were off the main road. No, Rafe said simply. You are going to restore the glory of the Silver Moon Pack. Your pups will be legends. They will have the White Wolf magic. I will never bear your children. I spat. I would rather die. You won't have a choice, Rafe said, turning the wheel sharply. Once we get you into the containment cell, He stopped mid-sentence. A vibration shook the car. It started low. A thrumming energy that rattled the windows and made the hair on my arms stand up. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't the road. It was him. Even though I hadn't completed the bond, I could feel Nikolai. He wasn't just angry. He was a void of pure, consuming rage. It felt like a thunderstorm was chasing us, eating up the air, suffocating the night. What is that? Rafe muttered, checking the side mirrors frantically. Is that an earthquake? It's not an earthquake, I whispered, a terrified hope blooming in my chest. It's the king. Then the howl cut through the night. It wasn't the howl of a normal wolf. It was a sound from a nightmare. Deep, guttural, and vibrating with the promise of death. It shook the frame of the SUV. Rafe cursed and slammed on the gas. The speedometer climbed. Impossible. No wolf is that fast. We are 30 miles out. I struggled to my knees and looked out the back window. At first, I saw only darkness. Then, I saw them. Two glowing, blood-red eyes floating in the blackness of the forest, moving parallel to the car. They were bobbing, weaving through the trees at an impossible speed. A massive shadow burst from the tree line. It was a wolf, but it was monstrous. It was black as midnight, standing nearly as tall as the car itself. Its teeth were bared in a snarl that promised annihilation. "Nikolai!" I screamed. Rafe saw him too. He screamed, swerving the car, trying to knock the wolf off the road. But Nikolai was too agile. The black wolf leaped, soaring through the air. Crunch! Massive claws dug into the metal roof of the SUV. The ceiling buckled inward above my head. The sound of metal tearing like paper filled the cabin. "Get off!" Rafe screamed, losing control. The car swerved violently to the left. We went off the road. The world tumbled. Trees smashed against the windows. Glass shattered, raining down on me like diamonds. The car rolled once, twice, and came to a jarring halt against a massive oak tree. Steam hissed from the radiator. Silence fell over the forest. Chapter 13. The Rescue. I was hanging sideways, tangled in the seatbelt. I coughed, tasting dust and copper. Rafe groaned from the front seat. He kicked his door open, the metal groaning in protest. He crawled out, stumbling onto the wet grass. He didn't run away. He came around to the back, ripping my door open with frantic strength. He grabbed my arm and yanked me out of the wreckage. "Get up!" he screamed, dragging me toward a small, dilapidated hunting cabin a few yards away. "We have to get inside! He's going to kill you, Rafe!" I yelled, stumbling after him, my bound hands useless to stop him. "Just give up!" "Never!" Rafe shouted. "I am an alpha. I do not yield." He dragged me into the cabin and slammed the door, locking the deadbolt. It was a flimsy wooden thing, rotted with age. He shoved a heavy table in front of it. Rafe spun around, grabbing my shoulders, shaking me. His eyes were wide with terror. "Call him off. Tell him to stop, or I'll kill you right now." "I can't control him," I cried. "He's gone feral." Boom! The entire cabin shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling beams. Something massive had rammed the door. Boom! Wood splintered. The table slid backward across the floor. Rafe backed away, pulling a silver knife from his belt. He grabbed me, pulling me against his chest, holding the knife to my throat. "Stay back!" he screamed at the door. "I have silver! I'll cut her!" The third hit didn't just break the door, it disintegrated it. Nikolai stood in the doorway. He had shifted back to human form, but he was still a monster. He was naked, his body covered in mud and blood from the crash. His chest heaved with animalistic breaths. His eyes were not violet. They were red, glowing, demonic red. He looked at Rafe. Then he looked at the knife pressing into the soft skin of my neck. "Let her go." The voice wasn't human. It was two voices layered on top of each other. The man and the beast. "If you take one step, she bleeds," Rafe yelled, his hand shaking so hard the knife nicked my skin. A single drop of warm blood trickled down my neck. The scent of my blood hit Nikolai. He didn't step. He vanished. He moved with supernatural speed. Before Rafe could even twitch, Nikolai was there. He grabbed Rafe's wrist, the one holding the knife. I heard a sickening snap. Rafe screamed. The sound high and thin. The knife clattered to the floor. Nikolai shoved me gently to the side, putting himself between me and the threat. Then he turned his full attention to Rafe. He grabbed Rafe by the throat and slammed him into the wall. The wood cracked behind Rafe's head. "You touched her!" Nikolai snarled, punching Rafe in the stomach. The sound of breaking ribs echoed in the small room. Rafe doubled over, coughing blood. "You took her from my home!" Nikolai roared, grabbing Rafe by the hair and throwing him across the room. Rafe crashed into the fireplace, ash and soot clouding the air. Rafe tried to crawl away, holding his broken arm. "Please, mercy. I yield. I submit." Nikolai stalked toward him. He didn't look like a king. He looked like an executioner. He lifted his foot, placing it on Rafe's chest, pressing down until Rafe gasped for air. You yield? Nikolai asked, his voice devoid of emotion. You don't get to yield. You threatened my mate. You tried to steal her. You hurt her. Nikolai raised his fist. I saw the muscles bunch in his back. He was going to kill him. He was going to turn Rafe's head into a pulp. Nikolai! I screamed. His fist froze in the air. He panted, his chest heaving, but he didn't look at me. Don't do it, I cried, scrambling forward. I grabbed Nikolai's arm. His skin was burning hot. He turned his wild red eyes toward me. For a second, I thought he didn't recognize me. Don't kill him, I said, my voice shaking. He isn't worth it. He isn't worth the stain on your soul. Nikolai looked at me, then back at Rafe, who was sobbing brokenly on the floor. Slowly, painfully, the red faded from Nikolai's eyes, replaced by his usual violet. The monster receded, leaving the man. He stepped back, dropping Rafe like a sack of garbage. He turned to me. His bloody hands hovered over my face, afraid to touch me. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice breaking. Did he hurt you? I'm okay, I whispered. You came. He pulled me into his chest, burying his face in my neck, inhaling deeply. He was shaking. The Alpha King was shaking. I will always come, he vowed against my skin. Always. Chapter 14. The Submission. The ride back to the palace was silent, but it wasn't empty. A convoy of royal guards had arrived to secure the scene. Rafe was in the car behind us, in heavy containment cuffs. When we arrived at the palace, Nikolai didn't take me to the infirmary. He took me to the throne room. Bring him in, Nikolai commanded the guards. They dragged Rafe in. He was beaten, bruised, and broken. His arm was in a sling, and his face was swollen. He fell to his knees in the center of the cold stone floor. Nikolai sat on his throne, looking like a dark god. He had thrown a robe over his muddy body, but he still looked terrifying. He pulled me to stand beside him, not behind him. Beside him. Rafe of Silver Moon, Nikolai announced, his voice echoing off the stone walls. You have committed treason. You have kidnapped a protected citizen. You have threatened the crown. Rafe didn't speak. He just stared at the floor, defeated. I strip you of your alpha title, Nikolai declared. Your bloodline is stricken from the record. Your father has already been informed. He has disowned you to save his pack. You are no longer an alpha. You are an omega. Rafe flinched. To an alpha, becoming an omega, the very rank he had despised, was a fate worse than death. But your final sentence, Nikolai said, turning to me, belongs to the victim. Selene? I stepped forward. My silver dress was torn and stained with mud and wine, but I held my head high. I looked at the boy who had tormented me for years, the boy who had made me feel small. He looked so pathetic now. Rafe, I said, my voice was steady. He looked up at me. There was no hate in his eyes anymore, only fear. I could have you killed, I said softly, and the world would thank me. But I don't want your blood on my hands. I am not you. I took a deep breath, feeling the power of my decision. I exile you. You will leave the 5 kingdoms. If you are ever seen in civilized territory again, you will be hunted as a rogue. You will have no pack, no family, no name. Rafe slumped, tears carving tracks through the soot on his face. Selene. Please. Go, I commanded, pointing to the door. Run. And remember every day that you threw away a queen. Get him out of my sight, Nikolai roared. The guards dragged him away, his boots scraping against the stone. The heavy doors boomed shut, sealing his fate. The silence that followed was heavy. Nikolai stood up and walked to me. The adrenaline of the night finally crashed. My knees buckled. Nikolai caught me instantly. He lifted me into his arms, carrying me bridal style. You were magnificent, he whispered, kissing my forehead. I just want to sleep, I murmured against his chest. Let's go home, my queen, he said. He finally called me queen. Chapter 15. The Claiming. He carried me straight to his bedroom. He set me down gently on the edge of the mattress, the same bed I had woken up in weeks ago, terrified and confused. He knelt before me, untying the ruined laces of my dress. May I? I nodded. He peeled the stained fabric away, leaving me in my undergarments. He went to the bathroom and returned with a warm cloth, gently wiping the dirt and blood from my arms and neck. His touch was worshipful, erasing the memory of Rafe's violence. I thought I lost you, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. When I saw your empty room, when I smelled the fear, I felt my heart stop, Selene. I went mad. I knew you would find me, I said, touching his hair. I felt you. In the car, I felt your rage. It was comforting. He looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. You felt the bond? Yes. He took my hand and placed it over his heart. It was beating in a heavy, steady rhythm that matched my own. Thump, 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 thump. Selene, he said, I didn't want to force this. I wanted to wait until you were ready, until you knew for sure. I know, I interrupted him. I know who I am now, and I know who you are. I leaned down and cupped his face. His stubble scratched my palms. You are my fated mate, Nikolai. I accept the bond. I accept you. The air in the room shimmered. Nikolai closed his eyes, letting out a shuddering breath, as if he had been holding it for 1,000 years. Then claim me, he whispered. Anchor me, Selene, because I am drowning in you. He stood up and kissed me. This wasn't like the kiss in the gym. This was a seal. It was a promise. It was fire and earth meeting. He laid me back against the pillows. Skin met skin. The heat was unbearable, a fire that consumed everything. The fear, the past, the pain. As we moved together, the energy built. It wasn't just physical pleasure. It was a spiritual unlocking. I felt the walls inside me, the suppression my mother had placed on my bloodline to hide me, begin to crack under the weight of Nikolai's power. Open for me. He groaned. I'm yours. I cried out. Nikolai, please. He sank his teeth into the claiming spot on my neck. The pain was sharp for a second, a brilliant flash of white-hot agony, instantly replaced by a flood of pure power. White light exploded behind my eyes. I felt strength pouring into my veins, ancient and wild. The bond snapped into place, turning from a thread into a steel chain. I could feel him. I could feel his love, his possessiveness, his soul. And I sat up, gasping for air, my body glowing with a faint luminescence. Nikolai pulled back, licking the bite mark to seal it. He looked at me in wonder. He reached out and touched my cheek. Look, he whispered, pointing to the mirror across the room. I looked. My reflection stared back. My hair was wild, my lips swollen, but my eyes, they weren't brown anymore. They were glowing gold. Liquid, radiant gold. I wasn't just a queen by marriage. I was a Luna. I was a white wolf. The suppression was broken. I was free. Chapter 16, Epilogue. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed into the nursery, painting the walls in soft yellow light. I stood by the crib, rocking gently. It had been 6 months since the kidnapping. 6 months since I accepted the bond. Life had changed. Ravenna had been banished from court after Lucian found proof she had helped Rafe enter the ball. She was currently scrubbing floors in a remote border pack. A fitting punishment. Rafe was gone. Rumors said he was living as a beggar in the wastelands, driven mad by the loss of his wolf. But I didn't think about them anymore. They were ghosts. The door opened, and Nikolai walked in. He was wearing his suit, ready for a council meeting, but he loosened his tie the moment he saw me. He was still the terrifying Alpha King to the rest of the world, but in this room, he was just a man. He came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. Is he sleeping? Nikolai whispered. Finally, I smiled, looking down at the crib where our son slept. He had a tuft of black hair, and even with his eyes closed, I knew they were violet. Nikolai looked at the small bundle with awe. He's going to be strong. I can already feel his aura. He better be, I teased, leaning back into him. He has your temper. He growled at the nanny yesterday. Nikolai laughed, the sound vibrating against my back. He turned me around in his arms, looking down at me, his golden-eyed queen. Are you happy, Selene? He asked, his expression serious. He still asked me that sometimes, afraid that I would wake up and realize I missed my old life. I thought back to the girl who had fainted on the marble floor. The girl who thought her life was over because a boy didn't want her. I'm not happy, I said softly. Nikolai frowned, worry creasing his brow. I'm complete, I finished. I have my power, I have my home, and I have you. I took his hand and placed it on my stomach. And, I whispered, we're going to need a bigger crib soon. Nikolai froze. His eyes widened. Another one? A girl this time, I think. I grinned. And I have a feeling she's going to be a mooncaster. Nikolai let out a shout of joy, lifting me off my feet and spinning me around the room, careful of the sleeping baby. He kissed me, deep and full of promise. I told you, he murmured against my lips, his forehead resting on mine. What? I told you the moment I caught you. That I was yours? I asked. No, he smiled. That I would never reject you.